5 scores! Rick Vaughn.
We decided to get ourselves back in the game again with our podcast.
Rick Vaughn, Gary Tallon.
Probably the craziest story that you're ever going to hear about hockey.
We're going to be coming back to you on a regular basis.
You are listening to Squid and the Ultimate Leafs Fan.
Hello, Canada and hockey fans of the United States and Newfoundland, and an extra big hello to Canadian servicemen overseas.
Welcome, everybody, to episode 85 of the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, the Ultimate Leafs Fan. Joining me, as always, my winger, Ricky Squid Vibe. Squid, the landscape for the Leafs continues to take several turns and twists. Has the Toronto faithful holding its collective breath. The other night was no exception, and here we got rookie goalie going again tonight.
Yeah, I think it's a good move. I honestly believe that you give him 3 games in a row, right up until about not even 48 hours before the trade deadline. I mean, to see if this guy is legit NHL goaltender or, maybe he's not. And, I think you can see that in 3 games, especially with the teams they're playing. They're playing a good team in Carolina and then Nashville on Saturday. So, they're playing 2 good teams. And I think that'll give them a real good read on whether or not this guy can be the next Jordan Binnington or, whatever.
Exactly. Why not?
Well, Hey, put it this way. It couldn't be any worse than what they had before, where they gave up 4 goals or more in I don't know how many games in a row. It was incredible. And then this kid goes in and has a shutout in his first outing.
Well, and by the way, everybody, just in case you're wondering, we're actually adding a little bit to the show here because we got a 2-parter coming up with today's guest. We should mention is Dale Tallon, who you're picking up. And as you're opening this up on Friday, we're recording this on Thursday, pre the game against Carolina. So we'll have comments on that next week on our Leafs show. But in the meantime, we're just going to add a little bit. Of course, and with the trade deadline a couple of days away, we thought we'd get a few of our comments in on this week's podcast as well. So, yeah, as you're saying, Squid, 1 game is obviously not enough, but Shalgren certainly gave the club a boost in goal they desperately needed the other night. He got some good fortune, few pucks dropped his way. The defense was a little bit more responsible, I thought, and that's one of the things that's really been hammering at you, or that's been really gnawing at you recently with the way the forwards have not been really helping as they should be.
Yeah, and I thought they did a great job, or a lot better job of doing that the last game, and giving this kid a little bit more protection back there by coming back deeper into the zone. I didn't see a whole lot of guys taking off when the defense got control of the puck. Better defensive posture, and they hung in there and didn't allow that many great opportunities for Dallas, I didn't think. They had a few, and Shalgren had to make some big saves, but they didn't have a ton of quality scoring chances because they played a better defensive game.
Yeah, and the forwards, as a result of that, it helped because it helped not only in their own end because the team had a little more jump. They played a more responsible on their end, as we've just touched on, but also they made smarter decisions with the puck. And this is a team that's been near the top of the standings all year, so it sounds pretty funny to be criticizing them like this and actually applauding them for what they're doing. They've been getting away with some of the things they shouldn't have been earlier in the year, and vice versa. So it's catching up now as things get a little tighter. But I think we both agree that, as an example, the other night the game was 2-0 going to the third period. Well, I think you and I both talked out there. It could have been 3-0 at the end, or is it going to be going in overtime?
Yeah, well, they've been doing a lot of that lately before that game, and it's not a good thing to see when you're coming down to the last home stretch and then getting ready for the playoffs. So playing a lot better defensively like they did is probably something they should really dig into in the video and look at and say, oh, guys, if we're going to win, this is the way we need to play. The offense will come. We'll get power play opportunities. We'll get probably better breaks out of our own zone by doing this, and therefore enter the offensive zone with a little more speed and maybe create 2-on-1s, 3-on-2s that way.
Well, and the other thing that we're going to add to all this is on the goaltending, if we're on that, because, with 3 days before the trade deadline, everybody's hoping they may do something, but they may not be. This may be what we're dealing with moving after Monday at 3:00. But Campbell's due back next week. Nothing official yet. I don't even know if he's on the ice as we're speaking today. Hopefully if he isn't a one-game wonder, Shalgren, the juggling's going to begin. And Mrazek, we may learn maybe that undisclosed injury, LTIR, shows up, or maybe he ends up on Robidai Island.
Well, okay, there's a lot of options.
There is a lot of options, Greg. Yeah. Well,
I would say if this kid plays the way he played the first game in the next 2 games, which I would play him in the next 2 games, well, then you try to move Mrazek for a defenseman or put him in a package that gets you a defenseman. With Sherratt going to Florida, Manson going to, where did he go to? Colorado. These teams that are already real good are loading up. And, maybe if this kid, plays well tonight and can play Saturday and come out with another good outing, then you know what? You say, hey, we got a kid that's pretty darn good here. We can move this guy.
Well, and another name, don't forget, is that Klingberg, the Dallas defenseman. Since Dallas is so close now, apparently he's been taken off the market, even though he is a unrestricted free agent at the end of the year. So there's, as we talked about a few weeks ago, as it gets closer to the trade deadline, the price of poker keeps going up as the players sort of just, fade away, or they get pulled back, or they get moved. And we're seeing that pure evidence of that as we're speaking today. So keeping all that in mind, the recent developments are, we know the problems they have in goal. The next time we speak on our Leaf show, which is weekly at Wednesday at 6 p.m., folks, by the way, so tune into that. Will the Leafs look a whole lot different, a little different, or what we're looking at right now, in your opinion?
Yeah, it's very hard to say at this point. It's not going to be easy for them with where they are in the cap world and everything else. But at the same time, moving out some pieces and bringing in other pieces that you think are a little bit better might happen. But I got to be honest, I really don't know, Mike. I just, with the situation they're in, and they have a lot of good young prospects that they could move on. They have that first round pick they could move on and bring in some help. But I'm not so sure that they're ready to do that right now. I think they believe that this team is capable of winning in the playoffs, and I'm not sure that anything's going to be done.
Boy, I as we've talked about on our show, I don't think this team is built to win, and I don't think that's an overstretched statement. I think a lot of people would agree with that. There's just too many holes up front. As we saw, there's a few things that have to be plugged up. The core is there. But I think that there's some holes that have to be filled, and I just don't know where they're going to turn to do that, because with the cap space, unless you move an asset, somebody's going to have to go. And Mrazek, it's easy to talk about that moving him, because that 3.2 or whatever it is, like 3.2 or 3.3 he's making, that's a big number when you're trying to move some at this time of the year.
Well, and there's not a whole lot of teams in the league looking for a goalie that's kind of a backup or a tandem type goalie like Mrazek. Maybe Edmonton could be a team that you could be looking at and say, but then again, what are you going to get out of Edmonton? You're not going to get much out of there. So, there's not a whole lot of directions that they can go in order to shore up that D. And boy, oh boy, I'll tell you, it's kind of frustrating to watch, because you just don't know what the heck's going to happen. But, as Dale said when we talked to him, how do you build a team? Well, you build it down the middle: goaltending, defense, center. And then you fill in on the wings with guys that can score goals. Well, they haven't done that. They've gone with guys that can score goals. And, their centermen are fine. But when you look at goaltending, defense, center, well, that becomes an issue.
And by the way, Squid, as you know, that starting goaltender, that stud defenseman, and that strong guy down the middle, you can't trade for those guys usually. You have to draft and develop those players. And that's Leafs have a couple of them if you want to use Morgan Riley as one and Austin Matthews as the other. But in goal, there's sort of the weak link right there. And the only way I see them doing anything at this point is if there's a parked player with Seattle as an example who has a lot of cap space. Arizona's obviously going to be another player from that standpoint, but you're going to have to give up to get that room to do something. So it could be very costly for a rental.
Well, when you look at what Florida paid for Sherratt, I mean, that's what the going rate is going to be for a rental defenseman.
Absolutely, and that's a lot.
It's going to be a good prospect, which they gave up a player they picked in the first round. They gave up a first rounder in 23, which is going to be a pretty good draft. And then they gave up, a fourth rounder in this year's draft or something. So, that's a lot. And if that's what you're looking at for a rental defenseman, I'm not sure that's a good idea.
Well, for a player who may play 26 games for you, so you get beat in the first round.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and then he's gone.
So that, again, is we've talked about that's the price of poker. So, and again, Kyle Dubas is not a stupid guy, so he's figured all this out. And I know he listens to us all the time, but, that's probably why they're in the trouble they are. But besides all of that, I'd have to say, let's talk about the other guy who has been missing from the line the last couple of days. And even though they have a winning record, the Austin Matthews, everybody's talked about whether it was right or wrong or all that sort of stuff. He hit him in the head. He deserved a suspension. He got it. It's put aside. But my thought to you going forward, and having been in this position, it's almost like, I don't know, the roses come off the bloom a little bit for the fact that he now can be goaded into responding. So this could maybe even get him more attention from the pests and the flies that are out there targeting him, because he's been percolating the last couple of weeks, ready to explode. You saw what happened the other day. So where I'm going with this is you having gone through all this yourself and feeling some of the pain of it in your older years now, as much as I hate to say that, even though I got you by a couple of years. What advice would you give to Austin coming back? Because he's definitely going to be even more of a target, I would say.
Yeah, I would definitely think that teams coming in to play to Toronto or playing them at home, whatever the case might be, they're gonna look at him and they're gonna say, okay, we got to play this guy really, really hard, because he'll lose his temper and he'll do something that typically he doesn't do. And not only that, we got to key on him because we've got to keep him off the score sheet if we want to win.
Which is obvious, yes.
Because, this guy is an elite goal scorer. But, hey, if he's losing his temper like that, yeah, I would say a lot of teams are going to go, okay, get under his skin as much as you can and see if we can get him off his game. And so, my advice to him would be just relax, just go out and play your game and don't worry about getting hit. Everybody gets hit, especially the best players in the game, and you're going to get that. You're going to get attention. Just let it go and go about your business, score your goals, help your team win, and stay out of the box.
That's probably the best way to do it, because, it's going to be very tough because, every forward, defenseman, probably even the goalies are going to chip at him every time they can get a chance, and he's going to get it. And I think it's going to be even worse.
And this isn't even the playoffs yet, Mike.
and it's not even the playoffs. You're absolutely right, which is very, very important why this power play stays at the top of the heap as it is, because if you're going to take a shot at him and he's not going to respond, you're going to pay for it where you're sitting watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And, it's just kind of like you got to keep your cool under those conditions. And, it wasn't like somebody two-handed him across the head or something like that. It wasn't really vicious or anything. And when that happens, I think it built up from the game before that against Arizona.
Yes.
Where, that quick stick hold in the neutral zone, where I think he tried to sell it by going backwards and therefore wasn't able to catch up to Chychrun and take away that passing lane, where if he had just kept going, probably could have stayed with him. But anyway, it is what it is. I know he was quite upset after that play, And that probably carried over to the game in Hamilton.
Well, and don't forget, he plastered Tallon against the boards coming back into the Buffalo zone, and then Tallon responded, retaliated to him in front of the net a couple of times. So that's kind of precipitated the whole thing. But now, having said that, the other key part of all this, I think, is that second line, which we've talked about endlessly all year. My concern is we got to you saw John Tavares play a little more like himself the other night with two real wingers. And, let's be real critical about it. He has not been getting that support on the second line. Got to toughen that line up and give him some protection, and protection from the fact that he's not having to do all the heavy lifting, because that's what he's been doing. And he's getting pounded, and we've got to keep him fit so he can keep going. Like he can't be doing all of that. He needs the puck in his hands to make plays. He can't be going chasing pucks down every shift while his winger, and we don't want to pick on the guy, number 88, is standing at the top of the red circle waiting for a pass.
Yeah, I mean, well, what happens now when Matthews comes back? It depends on tonight's game, but if that line performs the way they did the last game, Tavares, Marner, and Bunting, you got to look at that and say, well, do we stay with that and maybe build another line around Matthews? I mean, that's a possibility too. I don't know. The way that line was playing, I would assume they'll go back to Matthews, Marner, and Bunting. But given the way Tavares performed the last game, you might want to reconsider that and think, well, geez, what if we build a little bit around Matthews on another line? Then we have two really good lines.
Well, because the fact is you can't hide an Islander anymore, because, wherever you're going to play him, his soft game is going to always be there. Whereas with Matthews, maybe to your point, Matthews is, well, probably the number one player in the NHL for sure with pucks and going after pucks in the other end. He's the John Tavares of 8 years ago. So the fact is, maybe that's not such a bad idea, and put Cache on one side and keep Nylander on the other side. And you know what? And because Matthews can play with anybody, I think.
Yeah, I think he can. I mean, I don't think who he plays with is an issue. I don't think he's going to score any less goals or because he's still going to get that power play time as well. And that power play is going at about a 28-29% rate, which is unheard of in the National Hockey League. So, yeah, I'm not worried about him. I mean, I think whoever you put him with, he's gonna make them better. There's no question.
Well, it's all in the hands of the hockey gods, Squid, and the players. First, they have to be responsible. I think it's time. They've heard enough of us for now. So I think what we want to do is turn it over to today's guest, Dale Tallon. You're really going to enjoy this one. Real good guy. So
yeah. Great guy, great person, and a pretty good general manager too.
I would say so. And have a listen, and we'll listen to how he got to that stage of his career. Welcome, everyone. First up, before we get started, we're having a few little technical problems. When you get to be the old guys like me and Squid, there are times when these things become a little bit challenging. And my winger's having some issues today. But anyway, you want to welcome to episode 85 of the Squid and Ultimate Leaf Fan Show. I'm Mike Wilson, in case you didn't realize that after me speaking so long so far. And joining me as always, my winger is Ricky Squid Vibes. Squid, how are we doing? Talking through a phone and a microphone. What technology we have going here?
I don't know. I think I got the microphone working now. Do I?
Well, keep going.
Oh, yeah. I think I got it working.
No, you don't. That's coming through the the phone.
My bad.
All right. Well, anyway, so outside of that, you're doing not too bad. Well, listen, we're not going to waste a whole lot of time on that today. Our guest today has a resume that would probably take the whole hour, so we're not going to do that to him. But he played with the Oshawa Generals, was traded in one of the off seasons for 5 players to the Toronto Marbles, including 2 buddies of mine. We're involved in that trade. Taken second overall by the Vancouver Canucks in their initial season in 1970. Would spend most of his career in Chicago with the Hawks. Spent 16 seasons as an analyst with the Hawks on radio and TV broadcasts. Joined the Hawks as a director of player personnel. Replaced legendary Bob Pulford as GM in 2005. Technically win his first cup in 2010. Moved to the Florida Panthers, where he's helped lay the foundation for what we're witnessing today, one of the best teams in the National Hockey League. And as a kicker, is a professional golfer. Please welcome, after that long introduction, it's actually not everything either, Dale Tallon. Dale, first off, thanks for joining us.
My pleasure. I'll send you the check tomorrow.
Now, sir, how are you keeping busy these days?
Playing a little golf, doing a little boating, doing a little traveling, getting to know my wife again, and getting to spend time with my family, and just doing a little bit of nothing and watching a little hockey and just enjoying life, really.
Now you're still in Florida?
Yes, I am. Yeah, can't beat it.
Yeah, I'm heading
Taxes
down there.
and weather.
I'm heading down there in a few weeks. We have a place in Sarasota, so I'll be down there.
Great.
Squid?
That'd be nice.
Well, you're welcome, Squid. You know,
Squid,
yeah,
you're more
listen,
than
you've been
welcome.
invited. Okay, go ahead, Ricky.
I got some work coming up. I got a few hockey games, appearances now that we're opened up in Canada here. So, got to take advantage of it.
Yep. I tell you, Squid's one of my all-time favorite players. I don't know how he's still walking. The abuse he took in front of the net, the cross checks to the back. No one stood in the front of it. I think maybe he and Dino Cicerelli, probably the two big, and maybe the guy that played in Detroit. They took a beating in front of the net when you had to take a beating to go in front of the net. And I got a lot of praise for Rick Vive and the way he played the game.
Well, you know what? It was the only way to play the game back then. I mean, if you wanted to be successful, you wanted to score goals.
How is your back?
Well, my neck is terrible.
Yeah.
My neck is like.
You played the game the way it was meant to be, Ricky. You should be proud. Good job.
Well, I just wanted to say, by the way, I spoke to Dale off air. We were mentioning that him and I met years ago through a friend of ours, Billy Gardner, and I played when he was the pro at Tamarack. And then I thanked him for the golf, but Dale had also generously given us tickets to Old Kaminsky that night. And the Sox actually were a really good team at the time. It's a terrific game, and I hadn't thanked him, so I'm now publicly thanking him out for those tickets, Dale. So thank you again.
Yeah, Kaminsky Park is a special place. The New Sox Park is pretty nice, too, and they've got a good team. They had a great year last year, and it'd be exciting to see them play when I get back up to Chicago this summer. I love baseball.
Well, our Jays made a big acquisition today, Mark Chapman. So they're really
that was a good pickup.
Yeah.
So that's going to be quite exciting for us. Now, let's get back to where you just were a couple of years ago. The Panthers. They've come a long way in the 10 years, or actually almost 12 years since you've been there started. Mm-hmm. What do you think where they sit right today?
I think they're a very good young team with a lot of potential, and I think their forwards, they have 4 great forward lines. They're really good up the middle. They're young up the middle, but talented. They got good goaltending. Bobrovsky's found his game again, and Spencer Knight's a real star of the future. And I think their D, Ekblad's having a Norris Trophy year. Uyghur and Forsberg, they've got a good team. I think they're probably looking for something to shore up their D, like some of the teams are that are very offensive-minded. But they got a legitimate shot if they do get that one piece.
Squid?
Now, one guy that you drafted that I would consider probably, if not the best, but one of the top all-around centermen is Barkov. I mean, I love this kid. When I watch him play, he's big. He uses his body. He's good defensively. But he can put the puck in the net and make plays as well. I think he's the best two-way centerman in the game.
He's a very great. He's a terrific player. He doesn't get the credit. I think as far as I think he's a Hart Trophy candidate, but he doesn't get much mention there. But every year he's gotten a little bit better in all the aspects of the game, and now he's a little more selfish. He's starting to shoot the puck as well and starting to score some goals. But he's a great young man. He's a great player, and he's a great franchise builder. He's as good off the ice. No one's more dedicated than Sasha is. Training and he's the ideal captain and leader. He's a quiet leader, but he's got a great sense of humor, and he loves the game, and he loves to train, and he gives it his all every night. He's very smart.
Dale, you've been around the game a long, long time. Is it because he's playing in a place like Florida that he doesn't get that recognition?
That probably has something to do with it. I don't even think the Panthers have a beat writer in the last couple of years. They don't have anybody following the team. Neither one of the major papers here has a writer follow them. So, they're not going to get the exposure. I mean, this is like Coach of the Year. I think that, Coach in Florida has done a great job. And, he might get the odd mention, but he should be mentioned in the Coach of the Year awards situation as well. He's been great, taking over from Q. not easy shoes to fill, but he's done a very good job of keeping them online and keeping them motivated.
Now, sitting back watching, Dale, as you are today with this club, what is it now when you watch? I mean, they haven't won yet, but they're obviously knocking on the door. What is it you can take away you're most proud of from your time there building this club or helping build this club?
Well, I think the character of the players, they're great people. And I can see that they really get along well. And, there's a lot of distraction in Florida. You got to be careful. Families are coming down to visit all during the holidays and always looking to come down now. And so it's easy to get distracted, So you've got to really be focused and concentrated. And these players the core has played together now for a while, and they're starting to get it. They're more mature physically and emotionally. And I think they're understanding what they need to do to stay focused to keep winning. And that's what I'm most proud of, the character of the people that we brought in here.
Well, I was also going to follow that up with, we know there's a pressure to win, but do you sense it's become a really win now league, as it is in most of sports, as these teams are getting younger by the year and the level of play continues to get so much better?
Yeah. I mean, there's not a lot of patience anymore.
Yeah. Look where we're calling you from.
They're very successful. They're very wealthy, and they want to win right now, and that's their priority, and that's a good thing. I mean, it keeps you on your toes, and you got to work hard, and they don't have a lot of patience, and that's why they were successful in business. So, it took Tampa a long time, and it's taken Florida a long time. And then all of a sudden, look at what happened. Chicago took a while and they got to the top, and all of a sudden now, you can't stay up there very long with the new business plan here in the NHL with the cap.
Well, speaking of that, I'm going to set you up, Squid, here for this one on you. But, it certainly makes it challenging, obviously, to build. And when it gets to the point when you're becoming relevant is usually the time you must make a big move, or you try to make a big move to take it to that final stage, but are restrained because you only have so many dollars to do this. So Squid and I were speaking about this last week, and it almost becomes unfair for teams to draft, develop, and then risk losing players as unrestricted free agents. What's your thoughts on all of that?
Well, it's very difficult for the fan base, especially in a place like Florida, where it takes so long to build up a base, to get people interested and people involved and sell tickets and get the place rocking and show some profit. And then all of a sudden, free agency at seven years, at age 25, they're gone, and it's hard for the fans to really build up a relationship with the player. And, it's different. So you have to be adaptable, and you have to really draft well, and you got to be ready every 5 years to kind of turn things over. And you better draft well, and you better have a deep system to offset those players leaving for free agency.
It's great.
Okay, so I have the solution to that, Dale. Okay. Now, I think the NHL should be looking at the other sports in baseball and football. What if you were allowed to have a franchise player and tag, whatever they do in the NFL, and that 50 or 25% of his salary cap counted on the cap, but you had to have drafted and developed that player. You can't sign a free agent and put the franchise tag on him.
Well, it's an interesting conversation, but there's so many different approaches and so many different opinions. 32 general managers at those meetings. We all have different opinions, different discussions. The Board of Governors has a different opinion. So, there are a lot of good ideas. But right now, this is the plan you have, and you have to work with what you have in this short window. So you can't dream. You can't think about things the way they should be or want them to be. Obviously, Chicago would have loved to have kept all those players. They won the first cup in 2010, and they were at the cap. Well, that was an issue, moving forward, and you have to manipulate the cap so you can keep the team winning. And that's the biggest task involved now for all general managers. And that's why they have such a short tenure, trying to make that work. It's a difficult task.
So let's go. Well, we're talking about the beginning and everybody and the dreams and all that kind of stuff. So let's go back to the beginning for you. Starting way back in Orlando, Quebec, you started playing hockey. You end up in OHA with Oshawa. How did it all come about ending up there?
Well, they had the Universal Midget Draft, and we were involved in Northern Ontario, not Quebec. We were in Noranda. We were always involved with Kirkland Lake, New Liskeard, all that. And we were always signing with the Northern Ontario Hockey Association, so we were always involved in that. And then I played juvenile hockey up in Noranda with some good players and had some good success. And then the midget draft came in, and Oshawa was in last place, so they had the first pick in the Universal Midget Draft. And I ended up going to Oshawa through that midget draft. And then after a year in Oshawa, things weren't very good there. And the Marlies made a trade. My dad was at the Hot Stove Lounge meeting a client there. And next to him was Gus Bodner and Buck Cooley. And they were talking about trying to get me. And he overheard them. He turned around and said, well, let's make it work. And so I got traded to the Toronto Marlboros. And, it just happened. My dad happened to be in the right place at the right time. And I love playing, going to Maple Leaf Gardens for lunch, watching the Leafs practicing there every day. And those are some of my favorite times in hockey.
Well, let's just say, by the way, that trade wasn't just any ordinary trade. You got traded for 5 players and a couple pretty good ones. Rick Kessel, who was actually a good buddy of mine, was actually one of the top scorers in the league. Bob Kelly, Tom Foxcroft, Chuck Giles, and the goalie Bobby Smith, who was the 5th throw-in, and he was a very good goalie.
Right.
So you got traded for some good players.
Scouting has improved since then.
So you played center for Oshawa and Toronto, but then Gus Bodner moved you back to defense. What was the reason for that? Now, was that a
well? We had a slew of injuries, Mike.
Yeah.
All our D got hurt, and so Gus asked me if I could play D, and I said, yeah. My dad played D for Eddie Shore, and taught me, how to skate backwards and all that stuff, and played me at that position as well. And so I said, I'll go back there. And turned out that I got as many points playing there as I did as a forward. And then when I got drafted by Vancouver, they were totally confused and they didn't know where to play me. And I was pretty confused myself. So
why are we going to get into that?
I told Hal Lako one time that I'd help play anywhere to help the team, and he took me for my word. I played every position but goal.
So that brings you to that big day that you got drafted, and there was a coin flip, I believe, and Buffalo ended up with the first pick, and you were second.
Right.
Did you feel any pressure going behind a guy like Gilbert Perreault?
Obviously Gilbert was the best player, and the thing is, it was Marlies against the Junior Canadians. We had a very good team, and they had a very good team, and it's a team situation. And Gilbert was the guy, obviously, and I was flattered. I didn't think I'd go second or third, even in that draft. And Vancouver took me, and that's what happens. I went out west. They thought that they were going to get maybe Perreault and then Reggie Leach, but anyway, I went to Vancouver and had 3 years there, and some good and some not so good. But I met some great people out there: Orland Kurtenbach, Pat Quinn, Andre Boudreau, Gary Doak, all these guys that I played with took good care of me. And, it was quite an experience playing in the NHL with those guys.
Well, your last year, you had a big breakout year in 69-70. Were you just a little more relaxed playing in that year? Because it just seemed like everything just went exponentially so much better. Your goals, assists, penalty minutes, everything. And then secondly on that, what kind of chatter were you hearing with the draft coming up, expansion draft? You thought you maybe had gone third or fourth. So what were you hearing? Is that where you were hearing your place? Maybe
I didn't hear much. I was most of that summer. I was up at the Orr Walton Sports Camp, teaching little brats how to skate, and having some fun with Shaky and Bobby, and so I didn't hear much. I knew that I was going to go somewhere in the top 10, but I didn't expect to go second. And then when I was picked to go second, it's quite a thrill. And then I went to Vancouver, and things didn't quite work out the way everyone wanted it to go, and I got traded to the Blackhawks after Team Canada because of my relationship with Dennis Hull, and those guys made it available for me to go to Chicago when the WHA came along. So that was a bonus for me.
Don't feel too bad. You're not the only high draft pick the Canucks got rid of before they get a chance to develop.
Yeah, they drafted a lot of guys like you and I.
Hey, you lasted 3 years, Dale. Squid lasted 3 months. So,
No, it was 5 months.
all right. Well, the story fit better with 3 months. Okay.
Yeah.
So now let me ask you. Remember the movie Moneyball?
Yes.
Okay, I'm making this one up as we're going along here. Here's a Moneyball question from Billy Bean. That 20-year-old draft when you got taken by Vancouver, 18-year-old draft today. Do you think you'd have been taken as high in today's 18-year-old draft as you did?
No, not at all. I mean, as I said, every year I got a little bit better, and at 18, 19, I probably wouldn't have got drafted. I played okay. And then the third year I was I was a little bit of a later bloomer, and I think they should go back to it myself personally. But yeah, definitely. That's a great question. I probably wouldn't have been drafted very high after the second year. But the third year, I started to grow and develop and get stronger mentally and physically and put some good numbers up as a forward and as a defenseman. So, we had a good team. So the team won. We got beat in the finals in the 7th game of the Montreal Forum in front of 19,000 people there when they came to see Durbano fight the Globinski in the Montreal Forum, and that the biggest crowd in history there. But we had a great team: Mike Murphy, Steve Shutt, Steve Vickers. Go down the line. We had a really good team. We didn't have the greatest goaltender in the world, but that was the difference. But when you're playing a good team, you're going to get looked at, and when you go deep in the playoffs. But I was a good team player, and Gilbert could do it on his own. He didn't need anybody. That's how great he was.
Yeah.
So I was flattered to go in the same conversation as Gilbert, but I didn't have the same ability.
Oh, boy. So you mentioned should go back to the 20-year-old draft, and I probably couldn't agree with you more. I mean, you see a lot of these 18-year-olds coming in. They end up in the minors or even the East Coast League at 19, 20 years old because they haven't had that time to develop in junior.
It's tough, like it's tough scouting a 17-year-old turning 18. There's so many things that can happen, emotionally, physically, growth spurts, break up with a girlfriend, tough living situation, the billets, not comfortable with the billets, bad team, bad coaching, junior. So the things that's what makes it so difficult for scouts. They got to really work hard at these, building up a book on these 17-year-olds and making sure that you don't mess up the draft. And that happens more often than not. There's no exact science when it comes to drafting 18-year-old kids, as you all know.
Yeah, well, as I look back at my draft in '79, and there was 18-year-olds, 19-year-olds, and 20-year-olds available in that draft, and I can't even imagine how difficult it was for the scouts to figure out who the heck they were going to take.
Right. Well, that's the lifeblood of your team. You got the better scouts, the best scouts usually end up with the best teams. You've got to really do your homework, and that's the thrill. That's the part I love the most of it, is traveling to these rinks and scouting and watching these kids develop and making the right choices to make sure that you don't mess up in the draft. And we all have those that we wish we hadn't drafted, but there are also some that you don't think much of that you take in the 6th, 7th round that turn out to be really good players, and those make you feel good when those come, hit home runs with those guys.
Well, Dale, just want to go back to when you arrived in Vancouver, top pick, expansion team, lots of excitement in the city. You arrive at camp. What was going through your mind? Is it like this just kind of hit you? Is your head just kind of a bit on a swivel? And you're looking at all these guys. You mentioned a few of them, the guys like Kurtenbach and Quinn. Were these guys giving you a little bit of guidance as you were going along? And how are we just adapting to everything that was swirling all around you?
Mostly, the quality guys would give you guidance. The guys that really, were going after you because you were a bonus baby in the first pick, and they're going to show everyone, and they're going to try and prove something to someone by going after you. So you expect all of that. But I was lucky, to have pros like Pat Quinn and Orland Kurtenbach and Boot and Doak and Schmatzy and Rosie Pema and all these guys, really took good care of me, and they told me the pros and cons of what to do and where to go and how to be a pro, and I still have great contacts and still, I talked to Kurtenbach, and Dennis Kearns, another great guy. You got to take advantage of those people, and you got to learn, because that first 3 years in Vancouver was quite a learning experience. But I was quite fortunate to, some of these pictures, what happened to my hair?
That's our man, Glenn Dreyfus. He's an absolute legend at doing this stuff. And Paul Pascal.
Oh my God, I don't have any of this stuff. I need to pay him for some of this stuff so my kids can see it. I don't have any of this stuff.
Well,
there's
I think
Dunk Wilson, my good pal Dunk in the net. We played together in Oshawa for a little bit, and he got me beat up a few times, Dunk. He was a tough guy. I remember he was chopping Dave Schultz in front of the net, and I was standing there, and all of a sudden I had to drop the gloves with Schultz because of what Dunk was doing with the stick. And I got a good beating because of Dunk, and I'll never let him forget it.
Now, Dale, how close of tabs are you keeping on that other guy in Buffalo that got taken just a notch?
I talk to Bert once in a while. He's a great guy. He's got a great sense of humor. I think he's a terrific person, and he's a wonderful player. But I used to play in the Quebec Open on the Canadian Tour in Victoriaville, and he was always there, and it was great to reminisce with him and talk to him. And I got the world of respect for him. Terrific person and a great player. He had that wide stance. He'd go around. He could make you. He can make you look pretty bad. He had more moves.
Oh yeah, he did to a lot of guys.
United Van Lines. He was pretty special player.
Yeah, I got the privilege of going to Buffalo, getting to meet him and Rick Martin, Rennie Robert, those guys, Sandy Gare. They're great people, and obviously great hockey players as well when they played. But Gilbert was very, very impressive.
Yeah.
I was going to ask you, Dale, Vancouver put you back on D. We touched on this just a couple minutes earlier, but you'd spent a lot of your career there, but would you rather have played forward? And do you think maybe moving back to D hurt your development? Because remember, as you know, coming from the executive side, defense would take a lot longer to develop.
Well, I was an offensive defenseman. Defense was something I had to learn but as a forward, I was a two-way forward. I was a playmaking center, and I was good both ends of the ice. And going back on D, I knew how to go up the ice with it. I didn't know quite where to go. I tell our goalie I'd see him in the bar after the game. I kind of just went with it, and I got a lot of points, but I was a pretty high minus that first year. I set a record for points that year. And but I didn't spend much time in my end, and the best year I ever had in hockey was with when I played with Keith Magnuson in Chicago, and we had a deal. I told Keith, "You don't touch the puck, make sure no one touches me, and we'll get along really well." And so I had my best year, and so I think I probably at center was my best position, and when I look back on it. But what are you going to do?
Yeah. Squid?
I have no regrets.
Yeah, it's funny. It's very hard to go from center to defense. I played center all the way up until I got to junior. And then just as the season was beginning, two of our right wingers got hurt. They said, "Well, can you play right wing?" I said, "I'll play anywhere. I don't care as long as I get to play."
Right.
See, that's what you're thinking when you're coming into junior or NHL, whatever the case might be. So I moved over, and I was it.
Now it's not center, left wing, or right wing. It's F1, F2, F3.
Yeah.
So there's no set. Like we kind of knew what center ice's role was to forecheck and take the late guy coming back, and to get help out in the slot, and the wingers would take the defense, and that was the way it was. Left wing on the right shot D, and right wing on the left shot D, and collapse on the strong side. But now there's no such thing. It's F1, F2, F3, and D1, D2. Whoever goes in first, that's so it's a whole different game now. And It's not as organized, but it's just different. That's all.
So just going to that first year with Vancouver, I mean, expectations are never high for an expansion team. How was the mood in the room amongst the players? Now, you had a bunch of veterans there, as you said, so I'm sure they were probably, good sort of buffers for everybody. But I think if my math is correct, they went through 33 players that year. I mean, it's only a couple of years removed from when there was 120 players in the whole league.
Right. Well, they had a big advantage, when they started, they had the rights to like 69 players because of the Vancouver Canucks in the Western Hockey League. So they had a lot of guys under contract, veteran guys, and so, there was a huge training camp we had, and we trained 6 weeks in Calgary, and I had, they put me with Howie Young. I roomed with Howie Young. Well, I roomed with a suitcase. I didn't see him for 6 weeks. Imagine, 19-year-old kid rooming by himself. And we didn't see Howie. We didn't see much of Howie Young. We only saw him at practice.
Well, yes, Squid.
It's kind of funny how you came up with that because, I remember in Toronto several years where we had 48, 49 players that played for us in a season. We always had 80 guys at training camp, 4 teams, and you scrimmage in the
6 weeks, 11 games.
In the afternoon.
It was 2 days for 6 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
You went to training camp, and that great picture in the press box, in Toronto, and with Punch Imlach with his feet up, and day off tomorrow. Bring your clubs to camp. And if you're 5 or 6 pounds overweight, so what? That's now that if you're not in shape when you get to camp, you're gone.
Well, there is a letter that I have that went around that they had to do 20 push-ups, 20 sit-ups, and be able to run a mile and play golf to come to training camp.
I could probably do that today.
Deal. That's there. Now, 1972, selected to Team Canada's Summit roster. Played 2 exhibition games, but besides the obvious, what do you recall from the series?
Well, the war against, capitalism against communism kind of thing, and all the things that we had to put up with over there. And, I went along for the ride. I had a blast. That was the most fun I've ever had with my clothes on. And, it was just a treat to be there, I had a mustache for 6 weeks and I shaved it the next day after the picture, and I never had one ever since, or, anyway, we, I was a sponge. I was just learning and watching everybody there and trying to pick up as much as I could to become a better player. And I just happened to have to stay and have fun and learn. That was my biggest goal. And then to have that happen and to be part of that is very special.
Where did you watch the games from? Over there in Russia, actually.
Well, I was in the last game I was supposed to play, and I went out for warm-up, and Dr. Chuck Bull was our doctor at the time, and I told Chuck I had a cold. So he got me something, that gave me a little boost. And I was running around, skating around. I could have pushed the Zamboni off the ice. And then Harry came to me and said, both Whiteys are going to play. What do you want to do? I said, well, I can't sit here. I'll go crazy. So I watched in the locker room, and I in and out of the locker room. And the third period, I sat in Bobby Clark's seat. He had a rabbit's foot hang down from his this kind of a hook that was in front of his locker space. It wasn't a locker room. It was like an old beat up locker, like a space with a tub in the middle kind of thing.
Yeah.
And I kind of sat there for the last game, and you could tell by the crowd what was happening when they scored or when we scored. And so I'd rush out and rush back in, and I was a little bit superstitious at the time. But the game 8, I was in the locker room mostly.
So that's it's funny. It reminds me of a time. Rick Dudley was my coach. I'm sure you played against Rick a little bit. Well, he's my coach in Buffalo, and he's given the guys these different things for performance and stuff. And he kept bugging me about trying these things. I said, I don't really need those, Rick. So anyway, one night in New Jersey, I was exhausted and I was tired. said, Rick, do those really work? He goes, oh, yeah. He says, you take one of these before warm-up and then take one before the game. I said, okay, I'll try it tonight because I'm exhausted. So I took it. First shift, I go to lift the stick, catch the guy in the face, cut him. Back then, you got ejected from the game. I'm in the press box, and I'm wired. I'm walking back and forth down.
I think it was just a Sudafed pill. It was nothing. It was just off the rack, a Sudafed. Just made you think it was something. It was probably baking soda.
Now, as the series is going along, Dale, what was your view of the officiating and what was actually going on the ice with the other team against Canada?
Well, the thing that Harry, I mentioned in this interview for this book that they're doing, that Harry was the factor, changed the whole dynamic. We talked about the wingers were always up high checking the point men, and then the centerman would help the D down low. But the Russians were so good in that big ice down low, we couldn't stop them 3-on-3. So what Harry said was, they don't shoot the puck from the points anyway. So let's leave them alone, put the center up high, and bring the two wingers down so we could outman them down low. And that was the big turning point for me, watching it develop as the series went on. They played the same way, that east-west figure eight stuff. We couldn't get the puck off them when down low, and they didn't shoot the puck. So we just put the centerman up high, and then when we got possession, we put it right up to the center, and then the wingers would come from behind and go wide. And that in itself, I think, turned the whole series around. And we adapted, and they didn't, and then we got lucky too, with some penalty killing and some questionable, we were shorthanded for most of those last three games. But I think it was sheer will and determination and heart and improvising and, just wanting it a little bit more than, because they emotionally were just like, level, and they played the same way every shift of every game. They didn't alter anything.
Yeah.
They had 20 guys who are all the same. You couldn't tell one from the other. The 20 best players you've ever seen.
That's exactly right. Well, now the final question on that part, I guess we could always go on about that, was, but did any idea in your mind that this would take the life of its own that it did and become so iconic in the history of hockey?
No, not at all. we were hated when we left Sweden by every country, even Canada. And then when we got back from Russia, we also stopped and played in Prague against a Czech team, which is every bit as good as the Russians. And we ended up having a hell of a game there. And then we flew home on a charter DC-8, and we landed in Montreal, and all these people were there. We're on fire trucks driving around. And then when we landed in Toronto, to see 1 million plus people along the Queen E and then at City Hall, it was nuts. What happened, and all of a sudden, and then as it's gone on, it's just taken a life of its own. It's been fantastic. It's been golf tournaments and charity functions and all these things and all these stories that we're rehashing and embellishing as we go along. But it's going to be exciting. September is 50 years already.
50 years.
Yeah.
50 years. Well, let's go back to the NHL now. But after 3 years, the dreaded words players don't like to hear, maybe you're a part of this, was you've been traded. And I'm sure you gave those words times over your career. How'd you end up in Chicago, leaving Vancouver? Things weren't going so well.
Well, I didn't see a future in Vancouver. They weren't sure where I should play. And then the ownership, there was a big issue with this Medicor Corporation of Minneapolis. And there was a big ownership fight in Vancouver. Things weren't going very well. Bud Poile got sick. Bud was my first GM and was really a good man, and I respected him, but he got sick. And then they had all kinds of regime changes. So the WHA had come along, and I had an opportunity to go play in the WHA or get traded to another team. And then after my experience with Team Canada, as I told you about Dennis Hull and Bill White, and Stapleton and Makita. And so I ended up getting traded to the Blackhawks, and I was excited about that because I love Chicago. And, I went there from there, and, it was it's my home, Chicago, really. I've always, since 1973, I love that city. I love everything about it. And even today when it's not so great right now, but I still love it. I think there's a great future there as well. But, that's where I make my, I'm in Florida for the winter, and the majority of but I'll go back to Chicago every summer anyway.
Now, did they give you the option to leave, or did you ask to be traded, or they just trade you?
I asked to be traded in Vancouver. Yes, so I'm either going to jump to the WHA if you don't trade me, because I'm not going to stay here, and that's what happened.
Yep. Now, things weren't going so well for you in Vancouver. Now you arrive in Chicago. Now, did anybody in that organization even read a newspaper at any given time to know that this kid was having some problems? We bring him into Chicago. One of the most iconic figures in our team history just leaves for the WHA, and we give him his number, this new kid, number 9.
Yeah, right. Well, there's Mr. Ivan. Somebody in the PR office had a brilliant idea. They were mad at Bobby for jumping. And they said, well, this kid wore number 9 in Vancouver. Let's give him number 9. Oh, okay. So the first press conference, where this picture was taken, I said, this is great. There are 2 things missing. I said, a decimal point in front of the number and 40 pounds of muscle. And I said, I don't want this number. I didn't say it there, but right after that press conference, I told Tommy Ivan and Billy Ray, I said, I'm not wearing that number. Oh, no, you have to. So now they were pissed at me for not wanting it. So I went back to the Walton camp, and Bobby and they said, what are you doing? You can't wear it. I said, I'm not going to wear that number. So I go to training camp, and there it is, number 9. And we go to Notre Dame to play an exhibition game, squad game against Dallas, our farm team. So they had 2. And I walk on, I get on the ice wearing this number 9, and there were only 2,500 people in that. They had the worst rink in hockey at that time. Now they have a nice facility. And I thought my nickname was Moose, right? They're booing the crap out of me. I said, I can't do this. This is crazy. So I told them I don't want the number, and now they were upset with me. But it was come on. Wake up, for crying out loud. So the good trivia question is, who's the last guy who wore number 9 in Chicago?
That's right.
You win a lot of money in the bar in this one, especially in the East Coast. But that was yeah, exactly. Who the hell's bright idea was that?
Well, I got to say, that was definitely, they weren't thinking with their real thoughts on that day. Whoever made that best
interest.
It's funny, what?
So that's the way it goes.
The exact same thing happened to me. I go to Chicago. Gary Nyland has 22, which is the number I'd worn all the way up through here and everything. But he wouldn't give it to me. So I said, okay, I'll wear 44. Ole comes in and goes, you can't wear 44. We just made a big trade, and it's going to bring more attention to me. And I go, Ole, it's this goddamn number. It's on my back. It's not on the front. He said, it's not going to change the way I play. But he wouldn't let me wear it.
Yeah.
So I ended up wearing 27.
You like Nyland a lot.